All right, it is 1 o'clock on the dot, and I can see the attendees are just flying in. We're going to get started. I'm going to introduce you to Dawn Monroe. We'll let her come online. There she is. And don't forget, you're muted. So, Dawn, welcome. Thanks for joining us again today. We had a great time last week, and we're happy to have her back. So just a reminder, if you look in the chat, Haley Clark has been posting the Dropbox link for you with today's files. If you don't have them, we emailed them to you yesterday. Check your spam filter. If it's not there, grab that, download them. But without further ado, hi, Dawn. We'll let you get started.
Hi, Carl. Thanks for having me back, and hello, everyone. I'm glad to have you here on this call with us. I've got another exciting day of Excel planned for you, or hour, really. So I'm glad you're here, getting set up, getting my screen shared, and I am ready to go. How about you all? Okay, so if you joined us last week, we added a lot of Excel intermediate kind of skills. I hope you took those right back to your office and were able to do some of those things right away. I've got the same kind of vibe today. I want to share with you and kind of pick up where I left off with creating tables, getting really good at sorting and filtering, and taking it next level to pivot or summarize your data. So that's where I'm going, and I think you are going to love this day. I hope so. So if you didn't attend last week, and probably there's several of you that haven't, we are going to take you right into using data lists as tables in Microsoft Excel, and hopefully get you some great new skills you can start using right away. Okay, so this is how I'm going to start. I'm going to go through tables, get you sorting and filtering, and talk about some of the issues that you might experience when you are trying to summarize data. From that point, we're going to make a fun, fancy dashboard or show you how to build the elements to do the kind of things you're seeing in this visual right here. We want to have charts. We want to have interactive buttons called slicers, and even use timelines. So that's where I'm taking you on this journey today, and I am so excited you're here. Hopefully you've got the file downloaded. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to my file. I've got mine ready to go, and here it comes. Now, the way I set up my files, the first tab in your Excel sheet is a set of resources. So click away at any of these things as you need them after the program today, and it will get you in touch with us. And don't forget, we're going to do a PowerPoint one in January, so hope you join us. And then if you want copies of those slides, they're on the second tab. I want you to go all the way over to the one that says Table to Pivot. That's where I'm going to kick off today. Now, many of you might start using data lists by turning on something called a data filter from the Data tab. I'm going to walk over to that right now. So I'm clicking on the Data tab, and in there, looking in that Sort and Filter group, there is a Filter button. I'm going to click that, the Filter button. What it did was turn on, I'm going to roll up to them, it turns on little drop-down handles at the top of each column. So this is a common way people get started with sorting and filtering, because in here I can sort A to Z, Z to A, depending on what I have in here. If it's dates, it's going to be old to new or new to old. If it's text, it will sort A to Z or Z to A. If it's a number, you get small to large and large to small. So depending what's in the column, that's going to uh, give you the correct kind of data sorting features. Now you can also sort from the data tab with those buttons up there. There is a single sort A to Z and Z to A. So to use those, you simply are clicked in a column of data and you can click. Let's try this. Let's do the dates first. I'll click in there and do A to Z. And what that gives me is sorted from your oldest to newest. But you can also use this drop down that we just turned on with those data filters. Okay, so several ways to do the same thing. If you want to do multiple levels of sorting, you're going to want to use that sort button, that bigger sort button inside that sort and filter group. That's going to allow you to add levels. And by this, I mean, let's say I want to sort by quarters first, and then by regions, and then by product, or something like that. So what you'll do is add more levels so that you can do that. So I'll click quarters to sort by quarters first, and then add a level and sort by, let's do the region, and add a level and then sort by, we'll do the product name. So if you have multiple levels of sorting to be done, and a lot of times you do, you'll do it this way. Now, notice out here to the right, you get to choose, is it going high to low, A to Z on each particular thing. Let me go ahead and say okay there, and you can see the sort in action. So that did our quarters, and then by regions within the quarter, and then by product name within that. So whatever makes sense in your data set. A lot of times you might have by country, by state, by city, and then down to name or something like that. That would be a real common one. I see Carl's putting a note in there. Definitely put any questions you have for me in the chat as we go. In just 1 hour, I'm going to talk about a lot of things. And so if you feel like you missed something, let us know. And you're also going to get a recording of this as well. If you're just coming in, the file is definitely out there. So go and look for that. Now, what I want to share with you, beyond what we just did with sorting and filtering, if you jump into one of those drop-down menus, I'll go to region. I want to point out filtering. Filtering's a little different. Basically, I want to select only what I want to see from that list. And so when I choose to filter, I can do it from several methods within this menu. I can pop out like the text filters, and you've got different situations. Does it equal? Does it begin with? Does it contain? You get to put in what you want. Or you could use a search bar to find things. What I really like is that it looks at my column and it says, hey, you've got all these categories of things. And so here I can click select all to uncheck everything. And then I can just pick one particular region or multiple regions that I'd like to see. And I say, okay. When you do that, you are actually filtering your data so you only see what you chose to see. In this case, I chose the Northeast region, and I can see there the little funnel, and I can see on the left those bright blue numbers. Those are tips that let me know I'm in a filtered state of mind. You'll also see in that sort and filter group on the data tab that you have a clear option. Maybe you've added more data, so you need to reapply a filter. And it also has an advanced level of filtering that I won't be diving into today, but you could explore that a little deeper as well. So you're not limited to a single sort. I could also jump in and sort by another category if I wanted to here. And I'll just say, okay. And so I've now filtered not only by region, but I also did by product name here as well. And I'm seeing that I'm down to only 4 records that meet those 2 different criterias that I've given in the filtering. Now, if I want to clear those filters, I'm going to click on an individual filter, drop it open, and hit clear filter. Or if I have many filters turned on across many columns, it would be super efficient to use this clear button up in this group because it will get rid of all the filters that you have on in that data group. Now, when I jump in here, okay. Oh, I'm noticing what's going on in the chat. Did we accidentally share that instead of, go ahead and download it. Download the file so you have a copy for yourself. Okay, we'll get it to you, friends. We'll get you the file. What I like to do that is a step up from using this data filter. This is just an on-off. I can turn it on and off anytime I want. I can come in here, turn it on, get those little handles. If I'm done with it, I can get those handles out of the way. But I'm going to take you up next level. I'm going to turn this data set into a table. So let's talk about some best practices with a data set. First of all, don't skip any rows. We're getting ready to pivot our data and it does not like blank rows. So sometimes I see people will put the heading row and then put in a blank row. Don't do that. Just do your heading row and then start the data. And don't put any dividing blank lines in the middle of the data set. We don't want to do that either. It's not good for our pivot situation. So what I'm going to do is click on any one cell in the data set and return to the Home tab. When I'm on the Home tab, there is in the middle, right on the middle of the ribbon, do you see it? Format as a table. This is where you can come, and it looks like you're just picking pretty colors and turning on a style. And you kind of are, but what you're doing, I'm going to choose a medium one, by the way. I am actually designating that this whole set of data is going to become what Excel calls a table. Notice that it's verifying my range and that I have a checkbox to say, yes, my table does have headers. And I'll say, okay. Now in here, you're getting the exact same things that we had earlier with those drop downs to sort and filter. But you know what? You also got a table design tab at the top. When you are sitting on this data set, you'll see that you can get back to that table design. If you click out on the side, you lose it. It's like when you are clicked on a picture in, say, PowerPoint, and when you click away, you lose the picture tools. It's the same scenario here. So make sure you're sitting on your table. There you see the table design tab. You can name your table. We're going to get into the summarizing with the pivot table, but it's got all kinds of tools in here. So you can drop that open and you can change your mind on the color whenever you need to. And then you've got all these check boxes here. You've got the header row is an on and off switch. When I turn that off, it just makes it all white up there in the header. So I leave that one on. But you can also turn on and off those filter buttons as needed. You can choose to be a little fancy with your first column and last column. I'm going to click those now. The one I'm on makes mine bold. But if you get back into the styles group, you'll see that some of those styles have like an extra, color format for the first and last column. So if you want to accentuate something, you just use those. They're an on-off switch. Okay. You've also got the banded rows and the banded columns. The banded rows means the every other row coloring. And I know some of you have done this before where you manually did every other row coloring. What happens then is your data set changes and you have to clear all that off and you redo it every other row, format. Horrible. So this is just a switch on and off for banded rows. And as I sort and filter data, the banded rows works perfectly. So I certainly encourage tables for that. Banded columns is just the every other column if you wanted that. Now, what I really, really love about tables in here is the ability to turn on a total row. If you're playing along with me, and I hope you are, and you have this file open, you've turned on the table. Now add a total row by clicking that checkbox. This will kick you down to the bottom row of your data set and let you pick your favorite functions. You're going to be able to count and average and sum whatever columns you want. On a text column, I usually do a count. Let me do some averages down here just for kicks to show you how it works. And if you came last week, yes, I'm reviewing this. And then we're moving forward. So a few things, special things that this table is doing. First of all, I just got some great information and I did not have to build any formula or function myself. Excel is going to do my math. Oh, how I love that. Now, notice also when I scroll to the bottom, maybe you're seeing it as well. Do you see how your titles, your header row, popped up into the ABC column if you scrolled down with me so that you could see the total row? Date, quarter, region, those all moved up into the A, B, C, D, E, F so that I don't have to do the freeze when I'm in a table. It does that part automatically. I'm going to scroll all the way to the top of my table here so you can see. See how the date, quarter, region. When I can see all of the data or the top of the data set, I'm good. But when I scroll down a little bit, if I cannot see that header row, it pops it right into the ABC, the column headings. I love that. Okay, so just to test this out so you can see the counts, let me just isolate one of my regions. Let's do Southeast and okay. And let's say I just want to see the cameras in the Southeast. Okay. And do you see how I'm getting a count, an average, and a total? So I see a question in there about labels printing out. You will see those labels print out just at the top. It's not actually doing the print row, you would set that up still K in your print settings if you had the long list. In this case, where I can see it all, this is easily printable. But in your longer list, you'd want to just isolate and say, that's my print title. Yeah. Okay. Ooh, I love that you all are talking up formulas and functions. I've got one for you. Integris friends, we'll talk about that one. Okay, so I'm going to clear my filter here and let's take this next level. Let's get a summary of this onto a new sheet. So we just can keep adding new data to this list and we can see what the result is of that data set ongoing. We're going to make a dashboard. Okay, so I'm going to first, I like to clear my filters before I go on to this. It doesn't really matter. I'm good with it. But if you go to the data tab, remember that little clear filter I put in there? Or I showed you there, right by filter? I like to right click him and add him up to my quick access. Are you doing that? Are you customizing up there? That part of your Excel tools is called the quick access toolbar. You can right click any button that you use all the time and put it up there. I've already got mine. It's a little funnel with an X. So I'm going to click it right now and I'm clearing the filters of my table. Nice and handy. All right. So from this point, you can either start with insert pivot table, or they built it right into the table design. So table design tab, summarize with a pivot table. Are you ready, friends? This is going to make us a new sheet on its own new worksheet. We're going to summarize this data. I don't have to do any clicking on that. All that's set. It's taking the table I'm on to a new worksheet. Okay. This is the part. Yours might say sheet 1. I just sampled something earlier to make sure it would work. So mine says sheet 2. That's okay. It's a little intimidating. Over on the left, it's got an area where once I start building, that's where I'm going to see my data setup begin. Out here on the right of my screen, I see a pivot table fields list. Notice what it grabbed? All my headings. That's a little list of all my headings. So that's why I want to have good heading names. If I use some weird code in my headings, you know what I'm talking about. You've seen those sheets where you look at it and think, what in the heck did they do with that? I don't understand what column I'm on. So give yourself nice, clear titles in your headings. They'll come in handy. Now down at the bottom, it's got a 4-quadrant area. That first area says filters. That's a top level filter for a filter that you might want to do on the whole pivot table. I'll show you. I'm going to concentrate first on what's going in the rows and what's going in the columns and what's going to be in the values area. Now, some people just come in and use the checkbox beside the field name and click, and Excel will pop that in where it thinks you might want to put it. So for me, when I clicked by region, it dropped it into rows. And you see out on the left edge, it starts to build my data summary. Now, what I'm going to do here is roll down, and I'll put I like to do a drag and drop. I bet some of you do too. So I'm going to grab total sales and drag it and drop it in values. Okay, friends, what I did is just do a summary of all my regions that as I add new rows back in that data set, I can just click data, refresh all, and these numbers update. Wouldn't that be handy for you? So if I go back to table to pivot, let's just play with one of these so we can compare it. All the data is still here. I'm just taking and getting a summary on the other sheet. When I go and just choose Midwest, I'm looking at that number, 1605235, something like that. I'm jumping back over to my pivot sheet, 1605235. You see where I'm going with it? It's taking your categories, your columns that are good categories, and going to help you organize it in a summary fashion on another sheet. Yes? If this is the first time you're seeing a pivot table, I know you're going, okay, that's kind of awesome. Now let me add to it. Let me put something in the column. So I'm doing more of a crosstab table. Let me come up, 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 up. Let's just grab product name. I got four or five different products in there. So if I just grab product name, I dragged it and dropped it in columns. Do you see how it put those across, cameras, desktops, laptops, printers? And then you know what? It summarized the data for each of those categories. This is amazing. I'm doing all this math and I didn't do any of the math. What this becomes is its own little report. Let me add a little something to the filter so you can see what this is like. What if I put quarter down in these filters? What it added for you there, let me blow it up just a little bit. I'll have to zoom back out later. But what it did, this part where in A1 and B1, that is a top level filter. So there I see the quarters that it's picking up from my list. I can click. This is a pet peeve of mine. Microsoft, why do I need to click to click the checkbox to get the checkboxes? Just give me the checkboxes, just in case I want them, right? So I'm going to click that to turn them on, and then uncheck all. And let's say I just want to see Q4. Okay. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Haley, they are kind of awesome. But I'm not done with you yet. Okay, friends. So notice that I've got a little filter button there like we used to see over in the regular table, but this is in a pivot table. Notice you've got little drop downs here for your columns. And notice I've got them here for my rows. So you can do filtering and things from this little data table. And when you want to clear it, you can clear it from here as well, or go back to all. Okay? So I know you're liking that. Let's add to it. And what I did for you today, I've just got other tables. We're going to do this over and over and over. So you get to practice it with me today. Are you good? You loving it? Okay, so I'm going to take this. Now, notice I haven't pointed this out yet. When you are clicked on a pivot table, you're seeing a couple of tabs. Pivot Table Analyze and Design. These only pop up when you are clicked on that data table. Okay, you get all kinds of options. We're scratching the surface today, friends. I could do hours and hours on pivot tables, but in 1 hour, I'm going to get you started and you're going to take off. These are next level skills. If you've been trying to get to that next promotion, that next raise, these are skills that you could discuss in an interview. They're looking for people that know how to do pivots of data because it's all about data analytics right now. So you get better at these skills, and it's going to help career-wise. Okay, so focus, Dawn. Here we go. So I have built my table. I am going to click out here. And hey, here's the thing. You just start playing with your data. You can rearrange it. I'm going to do something wild right now. I'm going to grab product name from over by the columns, and I'm going to grab it and drag it and drop it in rows right under region. Do you see what I did? I was able to pivot my data so it's summarized by each region into a list below it. So some of your data might look really nice like this. And if you decide you don't want something in that table anymore, you just uncheck it and you clean it out. Okay, I knew you would love this. I knew y'all would love this. Now I'm going to add some things to make this even better. I'm going to add a chart that matches the table. You ready? So again, I have to be clicked on the pivot table or I don't get any of the tools. I'm coming up here on Pivot Table Analyze. I'm going to click the pivot chart. And what it does is it offers me some suggestions that might work for my chart. Okay? And so I could pick one if it made sense to me. Which one do I want? Maybe I want something like that. Let me do a pie chart for this one. And okay. Now I'm going to make it even better. Back on the pivot chart analyze, there's something called slicers. When you click slicers, it's going to give you a list of all of your field headings again. And I would say anything that's a category is going to work nice here. You could do by quarter, by region, by product name, the way I set this up, that works. Those are all kind of categories of things, right? I'm going to say okay. Look at these little guys. These are little floating button bars. The term is slicer. And I'm going to kind of just, you see how I can grab them by the title bar like any window, and then I can use those side handles to adjust so that I'm making kind of my own nice little dashboardy thing. You're going to love this. So instead of getting in either the table and the chart and doing the filtering from here, use your button bars. If you click on quarter, let's do Q1, it will isolate the data to just show that. Let me jump and see Q4. All these things are connected to this slicer. You see the filter, the top level filter I mentioned, all of these are filtering to match whatever I filtered from these buttons. I'm going to click out here to a region, so it's just giving me 100% of that region. What if I want to compare a couple regions? I can use my control key and pick another region from the slicer buttons. Have you done that before? You click something and hold control and then click something, even if it's not side by side, you could select it. You also have up there, I'll clear the filter there. This is a little sticky button, multi-select is what it's called. You click the first one you want, and then you turn on the sticky key button, and then you could click the other things you want. but I always kind of forget that one's on, and I like to use my control key. If you're a Mac person, I'm pretty sure that's going to be a command with your command to click on those. Okay, are you learning new things? What if I just wanted to isolate printers and see that summarized data? So I want you to visualize where I'm going with this. You have that list of data that you're managing every day. Could you set something like this up and be live in a meeting, clicking your slicers and showing what the data is live? You can, and you're going to be a rock star when you bring this in. Trust me, I have shared this with a lot of people that came back to me and said, that was so amazing. I took it back to everybody and they were in love with these features. These have been hiding in here for years. You've been using Excel for a while. You didn't even know how good it was. Okay, so clearing the filters if you want those. Now I am going to add something else. Now I've lost all my pivot table tools. The trick is click back on the pivot table or on the pivot chart. You can work from either one. Because I made the chart off the table, they're connected. Okay, so I'm going to click in that table, get my tools back in front of me, and let's also insert a timeline. One of my columns in there was a date, formatted as a date, a real date. And I'm going to click that guy and say, okay. Now, if you have a date column in your data set and it is formatted correctly, you get this little guy where you could say, I want to filter by years, quarters, months, days. Okay, you get to choose what this looks like. And watch me work with it. What if I just want to see July 2022 data? Do you like it? What if I want to see July, August, September? What if I want to see just December? Clear it. Can I use these in combination? Yes. Let me see Midwest, August 22. Did you know 1 hour of time was going to make you an Excel rock star? I knew it. Okay, friends, so that's kind of the basics of it. You can imagine these can get complicated. You can do a lot with them. So I'm going to try to answer a few of those questions as we go and as we play with more data sets. Are you into it? Here I go. I'm going to clear my timeline. Notice how when I made a chart, I took out some of the data because I didn't want it to get too busy, but let me add in some data so you can see now. So if I click in there, let's say I add the product name back under the region. Do you see what I mean about too busy? Right, so I might have actually several different pivots of my data. You set up as many tables and different charts as you need off of that same data set. I tell you what I started for myself years ago. I probably learned pivots myself back about, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And what I started doing when I started my own business was just keeping track of who sat in what seats. You know, who came for an Excel class or a PowerPoint class or whatever. And so now I have data from many years of people that attend my stuff. And what I can do is go back and kind of dig in and mine my data by going back, and I've got different charts, like what was the most popular Always Excel. Did I do more webinars versus in person? And once you start looking deep into your data like that, you get information and you can make business decisions. That's why this is so important. Data analytics is the thing right now. Okay, so I'm going to uncheck the product name because that's just too busy for us. And let's go jump back over to the data set was under table to pivot. Go back there. I want to show you how important this is. When you have a table like this, and let me just clear the filter so we're seeing the whole thing. Let's say you want to add more rows to this data table. You can. There's a little blue handle at the bottom of this table. I could pull it down like this and add new rows. Warning to you, don't pull it down and leave blanks because the pivot tables don't like blanks. So don't do that until you're ready to fill them in. I'm going to undo that. Come back in there. What I normally do is just momentarily just turn off the total row. And let's say I'm getting a new data set from another system that my company uses. If you get new data set and you want to add it over here, then you simply copy and paste or type if that's what you need to do. Let me just do one, 12/08/2022. We'll match the data, Q4. Let's do Midwest printer, and then I'll just give it a sample. Okay, so I've got all that set up. What you do when you copy or you input new data and you want to work with that new data included on your pivots, you go to the data tab, and this is where you bring in the data refresh all. It can go back and look at that data set and bring in new data. For that very reason, that's why I would set up my data as a table versus just turning on and off the filter button. Remember when I started, I came in and I just went to data and turned on filter. And then I came over and showed you how to insert it as a table. If you insert it as a table, you can use refresh. And any new data rows will get added automatically to the pivot. That's what I'm getting at. Back here, data, refresh all, and my Midwest number will change. It did. It was subtle. It happened fast. So all that refreshed. That's what I'm getting at. You'll become much more efficient. If you are manually going back and pulling new totals on weekly or monthly reports and you're manually pulling out that data, try a pivot. Okay, I am going to just walk you through that a few more times. Are you ready? We're going to kind of step back and start from the beginning because I did so many steps. Would you join me over, go to the Employees tab. Okay, move on over to Employees. Remember, the first way I did it was just to turn on filters. That'll work, that's okay, but that's not going to be the automatic updating part with the refresh all. You're going to want that, right? So I'm going to turn off the filter from there, and instead I'm going to go on the Home tab, Format as a Table. If you don't love that method, you can also go to Insert Table. We're not to Pivot Table yet, just a plain old table, or Control T. When you do that, make sure you're sitting in one cell on your data set, and that you make sure if you had a blank row in there, it might not have caught it all. So that's where you need to be careful with blank rows. And make sure that you are using the header system if you need it. My table does have headers, okay. For me personally, I like using the table setup so that when I add new data, I can use refresh all. And by the way, friends, you can also, if you love those slicers, you can also do a slicer just on your plain old table. Just doing this will be extra, a little sparkle to your sheets. So if you like that, just turn on slicer. Isn't that nice? And if you want to be fancy, you can color code things, right? You can do all the extra. Just as a reminder, if I'm on a table like that and I just want to summarize and get a total, on my table design tab, I'm going to turn on the total row. Okay. You can add the count on any of your text columns. And if you want to do any of those other favorite functions, and it usually tries to do a sum for you if it finds numbers in that last column. Okay. So I love, love, love that. Let's try it now. Customer support. Let's sort it by last name. Okay. If you need to copy and paste that out to another sheet, you're good to go. You have a little mini report ready to go. Copy that and paste it clean in another one. It only takes that data when you're in that filtered state. Control C copy plus Control V paste, and then just get my spacing right. Good. There's a report. Okay. So back on the Employees tab, I'm going to hit Escape to get rid of the copy part. And let's go ahead and I clear my filters just because I'm fussy that way. I don't think it makes a bit of difference. You can go ahead and start the pivot table, even if you're filtered. I'm going to Table Design tab on the ribbon. I'm going to summarize with a pivot table. Do this with me, friends. Click on Summarize with a Pivot Table. Remember, I've not named this. It says Table 2. That's fine. And I'm just going to a new worksheet. Okay. The way I'm going to set this up is maybe I want region at the top. Maybe I want department in the rows and then last name. And then maybe I add the earnings one over to values. Wow. I got a lot of data fast, didn't I? Fast. Let me step that up a notch and add some kind of chart. You know, that's pretty busy for a chart, but let me just show you first. We'll make one. With my pivot table tools up, I'm going to do pivot chart. I'll show you so you can see. I'll pick that one. That'll work. Clustered column, okay. Do you see how busy that is? So I think I'm going to uncheck the last name and just do it by department. Okay. And then you can begin your filtering. Let's add a few more pieces to make this a really nice little dashboard. How about some slicers? And I can't remember, did I have dates in that one? I don't have dates, so I won't be able to do a timeline in this one. But let me do this. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can see. Okay. Click either on the pivot table or on the pivot chart so you can see the tools up there, and do Insert Slicer. The ones that are going to work nicely for this one are department and region because they're categories. How's that? Let's see administration. Clear it. Let's see north. Is it working for you? Friends, share a comment with me. Let me know what you are thinking of this so far. And if you have a question, I would love to try to answer it while we're live today. So put questions in the chat for me. How are you feeling about that? Is it working? Okay. Oh, I see some questions in there. Yeah. How do you get the sum of earnings? Oh, okay. So you know what? It does not automatically bring the formatting over from the list. I love that you notice this. So when I go to employees, look, the earnings had the dollar signs in there. It doesn't auto bring it over. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a little bit and show you some things. This is kind of amazing. When you right click anywhere on that little column, the sum of earnings, you get a whole menu system. One of the things in there is number format, and it'll do the whole column, the whole set of it. There's format cells or number format. I'm going straight to number format and doing currency. Do I want decimal places? I don't need them for this. I can always count on somebody asking me that. The formatting drives us crazy. We want to see those comma and placeholders, don't we? So that's one way I do it. You could also notice down here in the quadrant area. Remember the quadrants? Filters, columns, rows, values. In there with each of those little settings, do you see how it has value field settings? You can click in the value field settings. You don't have to do a sum. You could do a count. You could do an average. It's got all kinds of things in there. It's also got a little tab where you can adjust and show like percentages. So that's next level. We're not doing all that today. But just to kind of get you started, it's got some really amazing features where you can get summaries of your data that really give some good feedback on what you're looking at. Okay. How did I add the chart? Okay, let's do another chart off of it. So if you have created the pivot and you want to summarize that with a pivot chart, use the pivot table analyze tab of your ribbon. If you're Mac, I know these are a hair different, but you can find all the stuff. It's all in there. And I go to pivot chart. I'm actually going to make another one. Let me make a pie. And okay. Let me zoom out so you can see what I'm doing. Maybe somebody wants to see it as a column chart and someone else wants to see it as a pie. We got that. Okay. Because I built them off of that same pivot table, they are all working off these slicers together. Okay. Let me scroll down. How would you show the percent of those categories? So Linda, I would do that different ways. So if I wanted to, and I used a pie chart, you know what? That would be pretty simple on your chart to simply add. Let's see the design elements. I might go and add something to my chart. I know it's hard to see there. Let me make it bigger. I'll zoom back in so you can see it. I might just format the chart so it would display it. Or I might do something. Oh gosh, let me see how it works. Let me try it, friends. Okay, I'm going to grab earnings. I've already got earnings in there. I'm going to grab earnings and drag it and drop it again under the earnings. But this time, you see how I've got the first one? I did the same thing and put it, there's 2 in there now under values. I know. Somebody asked, so I try it. I can come in and show values as a percent. So these are some of those value field settings that I did a right click. They have a menu. What the heck? So then I would change the title of that stuff. All that you can right click and go into value field settings. You'll start to become dangerous. Percentage. So show values as it's the percent of grand total, or if you've got multi-layer categories, you may have of the different of the parent or something like that. You'll have to experiment to get to what you want, but that's how you do it, friends. Okay, let me see what other questions, and then I'm going to walk through another one. I knew you all were going to love this. It is a lot to unpack. That's why we've got it recorded for you too. We know you need these skills out, and this will really help. Let me read that note there. It doesn't auto refresh. So the refresh that you saw me doing, Connie, that will refresh when you save and open the file again. It will refresh the new data, or you can force refresh it as you add new data. But it's pretty easy to hit refresh all. But you could forget. So somehow having a reminder for that would be good. Okay, I'm going to zoom over. I'm going to walk through this again. Shall we play with, let's do the sales table. Just walk through it again. Click in the data. Format as a table. Pick your look. Verify the data set. The range is to row 64. My table has headers. And let's do this one. Let's pivot this one by state. Okay. Before we go to the pivot, just insert a slicer out here. Insert a slicer for state. Check to make sure it works. Got it. Now clicked on the data. Do you remember how we started the pivot? We go to table design, summarize with a pivot table. Okay, remember we're doing the simple start. So this table to a new worksheet. I know some of you are going to take this and get fancier, but for right now, new worksheet, okay. All right, let's do one. I don't have to have a top level filter, by the way. I don't have to have columns with it. I'm going to put state in the rows, and I'll do the total in the values. Okay, let me add. Well, first, let's stop. Let's format. Let's practice formatting. Right click on that that group of the totals there. Right click anywhere on it and do the number format. Let's do currency with 2 decimal places. Take a beat. Make sure you're clicked on that data set there, that pivot table that you just made. Look for your pivot table analyze tools on the ribbon and find pivot chart. Let's just make a clustered column. Okay. Now this one, I got to go check. Did I have a date in there? I do. I have a date. So on this pivot, let's add some slicers. Let's add a timeline. For this data set, I'm looking back at it. It's kind of a weird data set. I can do a slicer by state, and I could do the paid column is yes, no. That might come in handy. So I'll do Pivot Table Analyze tab, insert a slicer. I'll do state and paid yes and no. And I'm going to add also, clicking back on the data set, Pivot Table Analyze a timeline. It's going to pick up anything it knows is a date, which is our sold column. Okay, I'm going to zoom out a little ways so I can work on this. Let's add that timeline at the top. Okay, not too bad. You could actually stretch that so you could see all of them, January through December, or scroll a little bit. Okay, let's test it out and see how it works. Clicking. Seems like these were summer. Yeah, they weren't all of 2020, just summer, July, August. I think there's some dates in there if you're filtering. And then try by state. If it can find any. Clear filters, clear filters. There were a lot for California if you wanted to play. And say who said yes and get your totals. Okay, I am going to pause at this point. I want to hear if there are more questions. Some of you are trying to get back to work, and I can respect that if you need to take off, but I've got a little time here for questions. How can I help you start to use this?
Okay, Dawn, I will rejoin this disembodied voice as Carl Kaiser, the content manager here at Integris. So I think you've handled most of these. First and foremost, we saw a lot of this. Loads of people that would be more interested in advanced classes on formulas and functions. So I want to say to everybody, we are looking at doing more of these. That very well might be something that we can cover for you. We are going to be sending a survey out after this. I think we're going to be posting it here in the link too. So, everybody looks at surveys and sort of goes, I don't want to do that. We really appreciate it when you do, because it gives us an idea of what we can do for you next. So when you get that, please, please, please fill it out. It's really helpful. So, other than that, we had a question from Linda Jeanette. How do you get the sum of earnings to default in dollars? I think you might have answered that one.
I did, but I'll repeat that the formatting doesn't come over automatically. You'll set up the formatting as you want it to display in the pivot. Once you've set that up, then you get to go do formatting. It's a little frustrating. I think that's always been a frustration. Why doesn't the format carry?
So I know you answered this one from Linda Morris. So we won't touch that one again. We have another one here from Connie Stage. I like all this, lots to unpack. I have a pivot table created with a refresh on load settings when I first open the file, but it doesn't auto refresh my pivot table. Do I have to always manually choose refresh all, as that works, but not on load of the file?
Well, you know what? The pivot is refreshing as you save and open and close that file. But if you want to force it to refresh, you know what I would recommend? Let me just click in a place it will activate my button, is that you could right click and add refresh all to your quick access. So it's always up there top ready to go. Wouldn't that be handy? And then you don't have to dig for it as much. But yeah, it is a manual refresh. As you add new data to the table, you'll refresh. And sometimes when I start to pivot, I see where I had a typo in one of my categories or something. It becomes a really great way to check your data and see that you are using good data. And if you have to go and correct something back on a table, and then you can come back then and refresh all the pivots, then would show that updated correction. So you'll find yourself using it a lot, but you could add it to quick access.
Okay. So we just saw a note from Connie that you'd answered her question, so we won't share that one. But we have another one here from Wendy Loomis, and this is in regards to the last webinar. But from the last Excel webinar, did you find how to add a revision date on Excel?
Wendy, I'm glad you asked. So I was looking it up, and I think we have to use code for it. But I got to tell you, this is my 7th training of this calendar week. So I have not had time to play, and so to be continued. But I'm adding you to my list because that was a question we had. Michelle had asked that one before. But Wendy, I'm adding your name that you want that one too.
So, alrighty. Well, that looks to be everybody. I see that Haley has posted the link to the survey here in the chat, and I'm going to share it on the screen for you. Again, if you've got anything you want to see, and we saw a lot of requests in here, please fill that out. It's the only way that we're going to know what to do next for you. So without further ado, Dawn, thank you again so much for everything you do for us and for being so knowledgeable and informative. So I'll give the floor to you.
You are very, very welcome, Carl. And friends, if you want to reach out to me, get connected on LinkedIn, I would love to hear from you and stay connected. So just feel free to jump in there and find me on LinkedIn, Dawn Monroe. Have a great, great weekend. This
Thanks,
is a great
everybody.
way to kick it off.
Yep. Sounds good. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.